Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Monday, July 31st. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 33 days. The game against Michigan in 117 days. At the start of the weekend, the vibe around Ohio State recruiting was not tremendous. It was, they missed out on some guys recently. Lost, was it NIL? Was it that they just couldn't close? Whatever it is, they had missed out on some guys. They still had a pretty good July overall. Oh boy, did they finish July strong. Two huge commitments, 2026 wide receiver Chris Henry Jr., 2024 cornerback Aaron Scott, both committed to the Buckeyes over the weekend. We got to talk about both of those. We got to do that with our buddy Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Tony, we're going to give people a little peek behind the curtain here. We had assumed all along Aaron Scott was going to Ohio State. It felt like everything was trending towards Ohio State. But just in case something went crazy at the last minute, we recorded a Aaron Scott to Michigan instant reaction show, just in case. And the scenario where Ohio State doesn't get Aaron Scott this weekend, that is real bad for Ohio State. And we said as much on that show, which you now will not be watching. It's like the speech that who was it? Nixon had ready just in case the astronauts didn't come back from the Apollo 11 landing on the moon. You're not ever going to have to hear that speech, but it didn't end well for Ohio State. Fortunately, in reality, Aaron Scott does commit to Ohio State. This is a real big one for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, Tom, if this is a choose your own adventure recording, it would be like, if you would like to hear about Aaron Scott committing to Michigan, please turn to page 64, and you just have people like ripping out that page, and it's like, no, we're not doing that one. So yeah, this was huge, not for so many reasons. You needed him, you didn't want Michigan having him, and this now gives you a really good cornerback class, and they had a good cornerback class. This really solidifies it, and Aaron Scott joins Bryce West as kind of the outside corners in the class, Miles Lockhart as the inside guy. But one of the top guys in the nation, an aggressive physical player who kind of has the demeanor that you want out of your secondary and is an aggressive guy. And it's something that Ohio State had put so much effort and stakes into this, STAKES. They needed this to happen. And it did, and it's been interesting to watch. And he's toyed with fans, it seems, and he's had his fun. And I wonder how much the coaches felt like they were being toyed with as well, because it sure sounds like he was absolutely torn between both schools. And I'm sure it was a stressful time for the Ohio State coaches, but they finally get the news they wanted.
Yeah, this was something that I think. There was always the question. He announced that he was going to make his decision on his dad's birthday, which was July 30th yesterday. His dad is a big Ohio State fan. So as soon as that news came out, everyone kind of went, oh, okay, he's going to go to Ohio State, because, boy, that would be a really epic troll move to, on your dad's birthday, announce that you're committing to the archrival of your dad's favorite school. And then, he went to these camps all last month, and you'd see him, and he's wearing all Michigan stuff today. Oh, he's wearing all Oregon stuff today. And you kind of thought, well, this is just trying to create a little drama, right? But there was always that voice in the back of your head that's like, man, this could be this incredible double bluff where he's making it so obvious that he's bluffing, that he's actually not bluffing, and he's going to go to one of those other schools. That was not how it worked out. So for Ohio State, this is, now you have two of the top 5 corners in the class. That's huge. When you think of great Ohio State cornerback classes, I always go back to 2017. They got the top 2 corners in the class, number 1 and number 2. It was Jeff Okudah and Sean Wade. Jeff Okudah and Sean Wade. And you think about the impact that those guys had. That was the 2017 class. In 2019, on that, the best Ohio State defense we've seen in, at least since 2016, and how important those guys were on that defense. This is a spot where, this could really change the ceiling for the Ohio State defense in the next couple seasons, having a couple corners like that on the outside, and then Miles Lockhart in the slot as well. This is not something that necessarily matters that much when you're playing Illinois or Rutgers or whatever. But we keep seeing in the college football playoff, teams are putting up 40 points. Everyone's putting up 40 points at this point. Well, unless you're TCU in the national championship game. But everyone else is putting up 40 points. And if you have corners that can just slow down the opposing offense, that is, that raises the ceiling of, boy, you're a college football playoff team, to, boy, you're potentially a national championship team.
Yeah, and the Buckeyes are starting to pick up some steam, or have been picking up some steam with cornerback recruiting, because when you lose out in the 2022 class on Jaheim Singletary and Terrence Brooks, who both ended up as top 10 corners in the class, this past year in the 2023 class, you get Jermaine Matthews, Calvin Simpson Hunt, who they really, really like. You add now 3 more to this. It kind of harkens back to those days when they were bringing in top 10 corners every single class. And so the just the presence of the depth and the talent is something that hasn't been around for a while, and they've kind of scrambled. And it is odd to see a 5th-year senior like Cam Brown sticking around and continuing to play. Damon Arnett ended up being a first-rounder as a 5th-year senior, but it's unusual to have guys stick around that long. And so when you've got this, I think they're raising the talent level of the recruiting again, which, as you said, you've got to be able to defend in so many different ways, and having guys that have the depth, have the tenacity, and then also, by the way, you have to have the ability to cover. So huge get for Ohio State for so many reasons now, narratively, and then down the road.
And on that show where he committed to Michigan, we had a long conversation about how devastating it is when you lose a top prospect, but don't just lose him, you lose him to your arch rival. And so not only are you going to not have him on your sideline, you're going to be looking across the field at him for the next 3 to 4-ish years. That's where Michigan is right now. Michigan right now does not have a true cornerback committed to their 2024 recruiting class. They've got like 26 commits. They don't have any corners, and they have maybe 1 true safety, maybe, and he's listed as an athlete right now. This is now a big concern for Michigan because, yeah, you've got Will Johnson right now. Guess what? He's not going to be a 5-year player for you. Their cornerback play has been significantly improved in recent years, but boy, this would have been a huge win, and now you got to go up against him. And now you also have to look at, we're going to talk about an Ohio State receiver edition in a minute, but there are plenty of 5-star receivers on the other sideline, playing at Ohio State. This feels like a real big loss for Michigan. You don't assume you're going to pull a kid out of Ohio, but this is a real big, almost but not quite, and now what do they do?
Yeah, it's an interesting question in terms of what Michigan does now and where they move next. They signed 3 corners last year in last year's class. Aaron Scott, at this point, looked like he was going to be their only corner, and now he's not there, so what do they do, and how much can you reach, and how far can you reach? And like I said, they signed 3 cornerbacks the year before. They've moved a receiver over as well to help them out this year. I don't know how often you can rely on that, or you just recruit athletes that can go from one place to the other. I think it's generally best for you to lock in on a position that person plays. Although it has worked out for Michigan. We talk about Mike Sainer still going from receiver to nickel, Hassan Haskins going from running back to linebacker to running back. So they've had some success with that. But this is, so many eggs were in so many in the baskets for both programs, and now Michigan has to figure out what they're going to do. And we've talked about the success they've had in Ohio, and so that gives them confidence, and the confidence didn't quite pay off this time.
All right, so from bad news for Michigan to more good news for Ohio State, Buckeyes also added 2026 wide receiver Chris Henry Jr. on Friday night. He committed at the Buckeyes' big recruiting event and inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. You were actually there for that event, and the media was not allowed inside, but you did get to lurk outside in the parking lot. Great prep for the upcoming hotel check-in day, but also great news for Ohio State. This is a very, very big addition. It's almost, you just sort of assume at this point, yeah, Brian Hartline's going to get a bunch of 5-star kind of receivers. And while it's a little too early to have recruiting rankings for the 2026 class, Chris Henry Jr. certainly feels like he could be the next 2026, the next 5-star wide receiver for Brian Hartline.
Yeah, when I posted his, I guess we can call it his commitment video on one of the social media platforms on Friday, I did call him 2026 5-star wide receiver, just because it's assumed that's where he will be once the first rankings drop. But it was really interesting because he came out of the building and, we said hi, we were talking to him, and he just kept gushing on about, I could see myself here. And I was like, well, what do you see when you envision it? And he said, playmaking wide receiver, you can, do it all basically. And then from 20 feet away behind us, you hear his adoptive father, Pac-Man Jones, basically saying, well, what are you going to do? Are you committing? And so then Chris Henry's like, yeah, I'm committing. And it was, you got to see it happen. It was kind of, like a gender reveal type of thing. It was a school reveal, and he just was speaking so glowingly about Ohio State and obviously what receiver wouldn't want to play in this kind of offense. But, just a surprise, not a surprise that he ended up committing to Ohio State, that he's, wants to be a Buckeye, a surprise that he did it at this point. And really, the part of the conversation was wrapping up before he finally got goaded, before he realized or revealed that he was committing. And so there was a chance that, we just talked to him and then he goes on his merry way. But Pac-Man Jones was there to bail us out.
As always, if you need anything, always Pac-Man Jones always there to help you out. And this is way far out. This is 2026 class, so he is someone who could actually be playing in. Who do they play in 2028? Is that Alabama or Georgia? One of those big non-conference series, I believe, starts in 2028. So he could actually potentially be playing on one of those games. Still a long way to go in his high school career, but I think you've kind of, if people are wondering, why are you assuming he's a 5-star? Is it just because his dad was an NFL wide receiver? And yes, Ohio State has had success with sons of former NFL wide receivers fairly recently, but also he was someone who going into his freshman year at Ohio State football camp, he got an offer from Ohio State last year at football camp, not this year, last year. So this was going into his freshman year. An in-state wide receiver, Brian Hartline does not throw those offers around very easily. And for an 8th grader to already be at the point where he checks all of Brian Hartline's boxes, that's where, unless something crazy happens, he feels like he is on track to be kind of the next dude at wide receiver for Ohio State.
Yeah, and really, honestly, my biggest concern for him right now as he's heading into his sophomore year is he's already 6'5". Well, how much taller can he get and still be like a viable, dangerous receiving weapon and still keep his speed and his quickness? But, he certainly looks the part, and, if you've seen his father before, late Chris Henry Sr., like, he looks like his dad, and we know that what kind of player he was, and if Chris Henry Jr. can approach that would be great. But, one of the elite prospects, I think, in the state, regardless of class. It'll be interesting to see what happens as he gets targeted more at Withrow, and they continue to make more of the offense suited for him, and see how he blossoms, because we've seen a lot of 7-on-7 in camps and things like that. It's time to start seeing it really bloom in the high school ranks, and just a surprise, and a very good surprise for Ohio State. They might want to focus on 2025 receivers at some point, though. Do something there, I think.
Yeah, the Buckeyes currently only have 2 players committed for 2025. That's Tavian St. Clair and Jonte Gilbert. So there's, it'll be a while before you get to see Chris Henry on the field, but certainly a big start to the 2026 recruiting cycle for the Buckeyes. And 2025, Tavian St. Clair already a pretty good quarterback on deck. So Ohio State's offense might be pretty good for a while. Exclusive Must Credit Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning podcast. That will do it for today. We will have much more. We are heading into camp season right now. We're probably doing a little less recruiting coverage moving forward, because we're heading into Camp Buckeyes report this week, and we'll have plenty of coverage from there. We'll be inside practice later this week, hotel check-in day, and then kind of getting going for real next week. So football season is officially here, and the best place to check out all of it is at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Great coverage of the team, great coverage of recruiting, great coverage of X's and O's and scheme stuff. Going to try and get you guys a scheme show later this week if I can line up a guest. I have someone who tweeted something really interesting this weekend that I wanted to talk to him about, so we'll try and get you that later this week as well. But should be a fantastic week and fantastic month and fantastic season, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. So why don't you join us? Become part of the fun there on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Our Facebook page, facebook.com/BuckeyeHuddle. We're in all the places. You can find us there. Just search Buckeye Huddle to find us wherever you are. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.